Happy Wednesday, my winners and goal getters. I am your host, Mellissa T, the procrastination bully. Welcome back to the Getting the Win show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate you. Now, today is another audience question, kind of question and answer session. Shout out to my girl, Janaea Hudson. She submitted a question in our goal getters community. She's asking about basically avoidance of tasks. In her specific case, she said hoping someone else will do it. So I wanted to answer that question, or hope it will be given to someone else. So I just wanted to address that as a pain point. If this is something that you struggle with, let's talk. Put your feedback in the chat as well. Let me know what your situation is. Now, for Janaea's part, I'm guessing this is in the context of the workplace. Janaea works in a very frenetic space, so I can understand her concern. There are times when the workforce is a bit thin, a bit skeletal in her case. So I could understand why want, you would hope somebody else would take on a task and you can leave it be. So let me just touch on this real quick. In a situation like this, I've kind of talked about this in the previous episode where I mentioned the importance of letting your superior or your manager, whoever up is assigning you your task, to let them know what's on your plate. And if they bring something new to you and you're not done with the previous stuff, you got to let them know, like, hey, if it's urgent and you need it today, find somebody else to do it. Or if it's not urgent, then I'll be able to take care of it, but I'll get it to you by tomorrow. Or insert time frame here that works for you, so that they're aware of your boundary. Like, yes, the work needs to get done. Yes, you respect the work that needs to get done, but either you cannot do it right now, right? You got to be straight up with them. Or, like, I can get it done, just make sure it's not an urgent thing. If it's an urgent thing, get somebody else to do it. But yeah, the one thing, yeah, that's the one thing we don't want to do though, is avoiding hoping someone else will do it. And trust me, when I say we, speaking from experience, I've done that before as a recovering procrastinator. So I understand how that feels. And clear and open communication is the antidote for that. When you're clear about what your tasks are, what your responsibilities are, then you can cover yourself in that way, and quite frankly cover the people above you or the people that are depending on you to do the tasks that you don't necessarily want to do or don't have time to do. And if it's a situation where it's a task that's assigned to you guys as a group, you might be in a group setting and you're hoping someone else does it. At the very least, check with your colleagues to see if the task got done. Because if not, no, you don't necessarily, I'm not implying that you have to step in and do it yourself, but I think the open communication will be a huge help for you and the team to find out where the task is right now in terms of progress. Like, did anybody ever pick it up to start on it and finish it? And then that way you're clear. Okay, nobody's touched it. Who's available to do it? You can ask that question. That way they know you ain't. That way they know you're not the one that's available to do it. But yeah, being over communication in that sense, I think, would abate or prevent you from avoiding tasks by assuming or hoping that someone else will do it. In the words of Les Brown, hoping is not a strategy. It's not a method. That's what he said. Um, so for us we're recovering procrastinators, if this is something you're struggling with, open communication, shed the spotlight on everything. Nothing is hidden when the spotlight is on it. And the beautiful thing is, when you shed the light on something, it shrinks down the size. When things are kept in the dark, they grow bigger because they stay in your head or somebody else's head, whatever the case may be. So that's the short and relatively simple answer to that one. If you need a little more detail, Janae, you listening, by all means, hit me up. If you need some more brass tacks, hit me up. If you're watching this and you want a little bit more than that, by all means, hit me up. But that's the relatively simple answer with that. And I'm speaking from experience in terms of the solution too, because when I made clear what I wasn't able to do or didn't have time to do, we were a very small team. And I'm using my previous job with the news media as an example. We were a very small team. If there was something that needed to get done and I couldn't do it right then and it was urgent, then the CEO did it himself. You know what I mean? He moved a little bit faster than me. He has that stronger behavior style. He's more of a pilot flight attendant, so he moves a lot faster. Whereas someone like me, I'm grounds crew and air traffic control, so I'm more methodical in terms of my pace. So if it was something that was not urgent, that needed to get done, by all means, I would then clearly communicate like, okay, I can't do this today. However, I'll get it to you by blank. And that was much better for everybody. And then in terms of hoping that somebody else would do the task, I would communicate that with the CEO, like, hey, this we haven't completed this yet. Like, who else on the team can we ask or entrust to do it? And then he would find somebody else to do it. Or if we couldn't, it got tabled until I was finally able to do it. So I promise you that wasn't cap. I'm sharing this stuff from my personal experience in life. And this, there's very little that competes with communication, clear and open communication. Because the last thing you want to do is hope that somebody else does something and then the thing doesn't get done and it was something that was important. And then everyone involved is adversely affected because it didn't get done. And then the last thing you would likely want to shoulder is the blame for not, you know, for not doing it. Even if it wasn't your task, like you don't want anybody looking at you sideways thinking it's your fault that it didn't get done. So at the very least, you cover yourself by being clear and communicative. That way all the bases are covered. Everybody knows where your mindset is, and you're approaching it from a mindset of ensuring that the entire team succeeds. Yes, within that, you're a part of the team, so you're looking out for you, yes. But ultimately, in that workplace environment, your superiors will understand, like, okay, you made clear you couldn't do it. And you're asking the question to make sure the task still gets done, even though you're the one, even though you can't do it. So they can understand that. Okay, so now that I've addressed Janaea's question, thanks again, Janaea, for that. Appreciate you. I want to get into another topic that I think is very powerful and important. I was reading an article in the Harvard Business Review by a gentleman named Peter Bergman. He is an author and an executive leadership coach. So he's authored several books on leadership and productivity. And he made a important and very clutch point in terms of beating procrastination. He made a very important distinction. It's not so much doing the new thing that's the issue in terms of procrastination. It's the transition from doing what you were doing before to doing that new thing that you probably don't feel like doing, don't want to do. So his whole point was master the transition. Learn to master the transition, and it'll be a lot easier to go from relatively more gratifying activities or calmer activities or less energetic activities like checking emails or being on the phone or scrolling, talking, watching TV, whatever, and then getting into the activity that will require more energy out of you, whether it's an activity you don't want to do, don't feel like doing, or just an activity that will require more of your brain power, something that is more painstaking. He said, just master that transition. Master that transition. The way he discovered it was by jumping between warm baths and cold plunges. And as simple and elementary as that might sound, it's a physiological jolt. So I fully understand where he was going with that. One of the things that Tony Robbins always teaches as it relates to what he calls changing your state of being, how you feel emotionally, your energetic drive. One of the key things to changing your state is physically moving your body. So in terms of mastering that transition, this gentleman said, hey, I learned it by going from a warm bath to a cold plunge, warm bath, cold plunge, warm bath, cold plunge. He said he did that repeatedly, three times each day. Warm bath, cold plunge. He said he went from taking 20 minutes to get out of the warm bath and only spending about 5 seconds in the cold plunge. So by the end of the week, he did it for 1 week. He was on a retreat. By the end of the week, he came out of the warm bath, no problem, and then actually ended up spending 5 minutes in the cold plunge. And he said it went from being a pain or uncomfortable to be, to do the cold plunge, to the cold plunge actually being refreshing for him by the end of the week. So he was able to adapt. Now, the way Tony Robbins teaches it when he talks about his cold plunges, because he does the exact same thing, he's a big proponent of that as well. He has his morning routine, and that's what he does. He does his warm bath, and then like he does his cold plunge as well. And the mindset he explained behind it is, that's me telling my body that I am in control of it. It doesn't control me. So if I want to change how my body feels, or if I want to change how I feel in a moment, I have the full control to do that. If there's some difficult things that I need to do, I have the power to do that. I have the dominion over my body to get it done. So you may not want to do the cold plunge thing. That's fine. I get you. The primary concept there, though, is, and I love the way that the coach teaches this, is willpower applies best in a moment. The reason why anytime you hear people talking about productivity and procrastination and they talk about willpower and it doesn't work is usually over the long term. You need systems over the long term. You need like repetition. But in a moment, though, when it's temporary, he advises like, hey, like use your willpower just to get through to the other side of that transition. And take inventory of the things you need to do right now to get to that place. So just as a practical example, y'all, those of you who tuned in to my live on episode 40, you heard my health journey. I'm still recovering. There was a point earlier today, I ain't gonna lie, I was in the bed, not laying down flat, but I'm sitting up, I'm on the laptop, and I knew I needed to record something. So obviously it's going to require some movement, right? I simply use my willpower to get out of the bed. I just needed to get from comfort to movement. So I just willed myself out of the bed and got to you know what I mean? Like just using that energy to get out. Because I knew once my feet were on the floor, I was straight. And I was. Like, once I got on the floor, I was fine. Changed clothes, did the makeup, all of that fun stuff. And I was prepared. Set up the laptop and everything. Everything went smoothly. So it's something as simple as that. Okay? So when we're applying willpower to procrastination or productivity on the positive end, right? Just know that you're applying the willpower to the transition between the state that you're in right now to whatever you're going to need to start doing the next task that maybe you don't feel like doing, that you don't like doing, that may take more energy for you to do. Just will yourself through that brief period. If it's something that's going to require some logistics. So in my case, it was moving the laptop from the bed to the desk, setting up the camera, setting up the light. And the camera and the light are always on the desk anyway. So in a way, that's a bit of prep already. All I had to do was put the laptop back here, put the camera on there, turn the light on. We good. My seat was already set up, and then hair, makeup, clothes. That's it, right? So for you, if it's something that may be physical fitness, maybe you've heard some of the tips, right? Put your clothes out, either put your clothes out from the night before, your gym clothes, or just go to bed in your gym clothes. That way, when you wake up, you don't have to use that as an excuse, right? Anything to reduce the friction from point A to point B, and will yourself just in that brief transition to point B. Once you master transitions, it's much easier for you to dive into uncomfortable or difficult tasks. And this was the point he was making. Once he did the cold plunges, going forward, transitions were very easy for him. Going from low energy tasks to high energy or high thinking tasks became a breeze. And as I mentioned in a previous episode, our brains are literally wired, and it's only one specific section of the brain that this applies to. But it's wired in such a way that when we do something difficult, something that we deem difficult, really it's just uncomfortable, but something that we deem difficult, that part of the brain expands when we do hard things. So if that's something you're struggling to do, by all means, use that. Hopefully that helps. And you guys have likely noticed in terms of the productivity tips that I share on here, there's a lot of them. The reason there is such a variety is that we're wired uniquely and differently, and not all of the tips may apply to you. You know what I mean? So I want to use this moment to remind you to just check out the playlists that are here on the YouTube channel. If you're tuning in here on YouTube at Getting the Win, check out the playlists and watch what's relevant to you. Watch the tips that are relevant to you and experiment. Dive into it from a place of experimentation and show yourself some grace. Like, okay, it's not that there's something wrong with you. That particular tip just didn't work for you. There are others. There are others. So just experiment with the ones, see which ones work for you and then make note of those. That way, once you're firm on what works for you, you take note of them, either jot them down, write them down in a journal, write them down, put them on your wall, put them on your whiteboard, someplace where you can see them. Even if you don't need to necessarily write stuff, maybe you're someone who prefers to have the notes in your device, whether that's a tablet or a phone. By all means, do that. Like, just make sure you have it someplace visible where you can see what works for you. Okay. And then another hack to help you with that willpower to break you out of the comfort of point A and get you into point B. This tip I'm taking from Dr. Eric Thomas, my coach, E.T. the Hip Hop Preacher. One of the things he likes to share, and this makes sense for him as a high flight attendant, someone who's a people person. He loves people. He loves working with people. He loves coaching people. He loves ministering to people. So one of the tips he usually provides in any of his keynotes to help people break through to the next level is whatever promise or goal you're making to yourself, name a why, and not a why as like a reason, like a thing, but pick a person as your why. Your mom, your grandma, your kids, your spouse. Pick a person and make that person your why. And then put that person in your phone as like your background screen. And if you make a commitment to yourself and don't keep it, look at the phone and tell that image of that person who you assigned as your why, like, you weren't as important to me today, or you weren't as high a priority for me. Because that's a powerful form of accountability as it relates to your goals. If you're someone who's not really wired for the minutia, you're not somebody that's big on alarms or calendars or notifications, maybe that's too much structure for you. Perhaps the assigning a person as a why could be more of a poignant and powerful way for you to hold yourself accountable for that luxury item, right? You see the shirt, right? Hashtag get on that. Hashtag get on that. So if that's a tool that you think will work for you, by all means use it. Shout out to E.T. the Hip Hop Preacher for that. I heard that. I said, wow, that is powerful. That is powerful. So I just wanted to walk you through that. This video is a bit shorter compared to my usual episodes, but I wanted to make sure to answer Janae's question, and I also wanted to get into that distinction between not being able to do the thing, to do the luxury item, to work on the luxury item, which that's not necessarily what the issue is. The distinction is the transition between whatever you were doing before and starting to work on that luxury item, or starting to work on whatever the task is, the goal. It could be something for work, it could be something in ministry, it could be something for family, whatever the case may be. That getting to point B may not be the issue. The transition between point A and point B is likely what's causing you to procrastinate. So if that's you, just a quick recap. In this short span, this is where you can use your willpower, because you just need just enough of it to force you out of the state that you were in point A, just long enough to get into point B. So in this case, willpower applies. It won't work long term. You need systems long term. And then take inventory of what you need at point B and make those things happen first to reduce the friction in your transition from point A to point B. If it's clothes you got to put out ahead of time, put them out. If you got to sleep in them clothes, sleep in them. If it's physical materials that you're putting together, that you're gathering for a specific task, gather the materials ahead of time, as long as you're able to secure them. You know what I'm saying? We don't want none getting stolen, right? But yeah, reducing the friction between points A and B. Okay. And then, as I mentioned towards the end there, approach all of these tips from a place of experimentation and self-grace. That way you can tell, you can see what's working for you and what's not. And then you etch in stone the things that you see working and continue to use the tactics and tools that are working for you. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, if you haven't yet, be sure to like this video, share it, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can subscribe at Getting the Win, and follow me on Pinterest, Instagram, and Threads at Getting the Win Show. All right. Remember to hashtag get on that. Okay. But yeah, if you have any questions for me regarding what I talked about earlier in terms of the avoidance topic, hoping someone else does the task, or if you have any questions for me regarding the latter topic in terms of that transition, mastering transitions, feel free to hit me up. Drop your question in the comments. You can inbox me on Instagram, DM me on Instagram. And if you're interested in joining the Goal Getter community, just shoot me an email, info@melissathomas.co, and drop Telegram in the subject line. And I'll be glad to get you into the community. But in the meantime, have a great and productive rest of your Wednesday, and a great and productive rest of your week. Peace. Beat procrastination with an attitude. Go to gettingthewingear.com. We've got shirts that deliver that message of your strong focus and dedication to your hashtag luxury item, because your goal is super important. You are super important, and it's important that the world knows that you know that. Give them the message of focus, of self-work, of self-improvement, and empowerment. Go to gettingthewingear.com. Check out the shirts, sweats, mugs, bags if you need it, and give yourself that reminder, give the world that reminder that you are indeed a goal getter. You are indeed a winner.